I don't believe you're here by accident. Would you just repeat this with me? Say, I am here on purpose. Yes, you are. You're here on purpose. And so I want to encourage you to open your heart over these moments that we get to gather together. I want to encourage you even to open your notes as we get to gather together, because I believe the Spirit of God is going to speak to you as we study His Word today in part number 3 of our series, Restore. Would you just shout, Restore? Yeah, we're going to go right in. John chapter 5. John chapter 5 is a beautiful account in the ministry of Jesus. It's a beautiful account where we see something very unusual happen, but yet it's also something pretty common in Jesus' ministry. Let's read it together and we'll see what the scripture will speak to us today. It says, after this, a Jewish festival took place. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem, like he did often. It says, by the sheep gate in Jerusalem, there is a pool called Bethesda in Hebrew, which has 5 colonnades. Within these lay a large number of the sick, blind, lame, and paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water, because an angel would go down into the pool from time to time and stir up the water. Then the first one who got in after the water was stirred recovered from whatever ailment he had. One man was there who had been sick for 38 years. That's a long time. That's longer than I have been on this planet. That's a long time. Sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, and he knew he had already been there a long time, he said to him this, and this is what I would underline, this is what I would circle, this is what I would highlight, this is the question that I believe the Spirit of God wants to ask you today personally. It's this question here. Jesus saw this man been sick for 38 years, sitting by the pool of Bethesda, the little colonnade area, and he says, do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? Sir, the sick man answered, I don't have a man to put me in the pool whenever the water is stirred up. But while I'm coming, someone goes and gets down there ahead of me. Get up, Jesus told him. Pick up your mat and walk. Instantly, the man got well, picked up his mat, and he started to walk. Have you ever met somebody who gets sick all the time? You know people like that? If it's you, we're going to talk about you for a second. But do you know people who get sick all the time? Now, I understand that sometimes in our age, as we get a little older, sometimes we're a little more prone, our immune systems, whatever. But I'm talking about young people. I'm talking about people that have every indication of health sort of on the outside, but they is always sick. Do you know people like this who are always sick? Like they always caught something. You heard so-and-so's going, no, I haven't heard so-and-so's going around. How are you always sick? One of my sisters is like this. I have 2 sisters. They're twins. And one of them, she kind of like me. She never gets sick. The other one gets sick for the both of us and everybody else like that lives in the southeastern United States combined. Like she is sick all the time. But like not really sick. You know what I'm saying? Like just sort of sick. Like, I visited her last year for 3 days. I was there for 3 days. She was sick 4 times in 3 days. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I don't even know how she did it. It's like a world record. Look it up in Guinness. It's unbelievable. She gets sick so much. Always got this and then got that. And I've had conversations with my other sister, not the one that gets sick all the time, because it's kind of weird to point out to people that you get sick all the time, but to the one that doesn't get sick all the time. And even talking to Mindy, my wife, I've asked her sometimes, I was like, is it a little strange to you that she gets sick this much? And then the questions start running through my mind. I wonder if she even wants to get well. Like, I wonder if she likes being sick, which is a very important idea for us to settle in our mind as we begin today, because some of you may hear Jesus' question in John 5 and think, what a strange, peculiar little question Jesus would ask. Do you want to get well? But, it's a loaded question when you realize some people actually don't want to get well. Do you want to get well? That's the question Jesus asked this man, which is an interesting question considering Jesus knew that this man had been sick for 38 years. 38 years. He's been sick. Has he been by the pool the whole time? I don't know, but probably a lot of that time. Probably a lot of that time he had found his way over to one of these pools in the colonnade there, and he had sat down because he was waiting for the waters to be stirred, because quite honestly, he thought that if I'm ever going to get well, if I'm ever going to get right, if I'm ever going to be healed, it's going to be because somehow I make it to that water when it's moving around and I beat all these other sick people, you know? Like that was his idea. And so Jesus comes by and asks him a very pointed question. Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? Which on the surface seems peculiar. On the surface seems like Jesus, like, can't you come up with a better question? But Jesus gets this man's attention. And the way that this man responds sort of lets us know something about him. It lets us know that, sir, Mr. Jesus, man, like my issue is not my willingness, considering I'm here at the pool. Like, I clearly want to get well because I'm here at the pool. My issue is the opportunity. Problem is, Jesus understood something this man didn't understand. Jesus understood that his opportunity was standing right in front of him. His opportunity was not in a pool that would stir from time to time. His opportunity was in Jesus himself. That healing was asking him, do you want to get well? That the one who could cure all disease was asking him, do you want to get well? His issue was not his opportunity. His issue was his willingness to do what his healing, his issue was to do what his restoration would require. You see, just because you want the result doesn't mean you want the process. Oh, we're going to go somewhere today. Give me a minute. Just because you want the result does not mean that you want the process. Just because you want the end product does not mean you want the process that getting that product requires. So Jesus asks him, do you want to get well? And really what Jesus is asking him is not, hey, would you like to somehow receive what you think this water is going to give you if you can get in at the right time? What Jesus is really asking him is, are you willing to do what I'm going to ask you to do when I ask you to do it in order to ultimately receive what it is you want, even though you're going to think that what I'm asking you to do is not going to get you what it is you say you want? Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? See, because every one of us in this room, we have some area of our lives. We have some part of our story and our experience up to now that needs restored. That's the common thread we all have. It's different for every one of us. Some of us, the restoration that we need is we need a restoring in our faith because, to be quite honest, we have no faith in God. Or our faith is on shaky waters at the moment. It's on shaky ground. For some of us, the restoration we need is in relationships. For some of us, the restoration that we need is physically in our body. Maybe it's in our mind. Maybe it's in our dreams. Maybe it's in our emotions. We need restoration. The question I believe God is asking you this morning is, do you want to get well? Because let me tell you a little bit about getting well. You see, the restoration you desire requires steps that you don't. The restoration that you desire, the healing, the making right, the getting back to it working again like it should, that you desire, you know what it requires? Steps that you don't want to do. For me, I want so bad to be skinny. I do. Like, you know, many people, when they become an adult, they start to gain a little weight. You go to college, you catch that freshman 15, they tell you about that. They don't tell you about that senior 60, though, you know, like they just, you know, they just bury that, you know. But like, I have never been skinny in my entire life. Like there wasn't like a 5-minute period, you know, like you go over to my house and you dig through photos from the old or scroll through my photo reel and look at every photo. There are no skinny pictures of me. I get around people sometimes and they talk about, well, you know, I'm big now, but, you know, when I graduated high school, I weighed 121 pounds. And I'm like, that's good for you. When I remember 121 pounds, it was when I graduated too. When I graduated kindergarten, you know, like I came rolling in because I was as big around as I was tall. I remember that. I've been big my whole life, and I want to be skinny. There's only one problem. I love tacos way too much. Like way too much, you know? There's this taco truck all summer. Right there is summer and is kind of summer in Perkins right there. And I love it so much with everything within me. Their barbacoa taco is unbelievable. Their al pastor, their asada, their carnita. It's beautiful. I love it so much. And to be honest, if giving up tacos is part of me getting skinny, buy skinny, you know, because I don't want the process. My son, Tucker, he has this new desire. It's weird. He wants to get strong. Like he is very into developing muscles. Always walking around trying to flex, you know, being like, And he thinks if he does anything, or even thinks for a second that he has more muscles, that then he has more muscles. And so he'll come by me sometimes and be like, Dad, look, I'm getting stronger. Here, come feel my arm. And so I'll put my fingers on his little chicken arm, you know. It's about like this. This is actually this is accurate. And I'll put my fingers around his little arm and all right, flex. And then I'll hear, I'll be like, flex. And I'll hear, he's like, I am flexing. I'm like, oh, wow, how about that, you know? Because he wants to get these muscles so he can like beat people up and dominate the world. You know, I guess that's his goal. Thing is, I've been telling him, like, you know, we could work out, Tucker, if you want to. Like we could figure out a little, like, what it's like for little, you know, fishy boys to work out and, like, what's good. Do some push-ups, do some pull-ups, start building this so you could build some muscles. And he's like, absolutely not. I don't want to do that. So you want muscles, but you don't want to work out. Yeah, that's about right. Well, you ain't never going to get muscles, little boy. You know, you're going to be a little twiggy arm. That's what you're going to be. Because if you don't go through the process of working out, you're not going to get the muscles that you want. I mean, people sometimes that talk about how they want to learn, right? They want to grow. They want to expand their horizons. They want to learn new things. And so it's like, all right, you give them a book. Hey, you should read this. Well, I don't read books. Okay. How about we sign you up for this class? Well, I ain't going to go to a class. I ain't going to go to something I got paid to learn. To do this. So you want the information. You want the knowledge. You want the wisdom. But you don't want to do the work. You know, this happens with people in faith all the time. We want God to bless us, but yet we know what God has asked us to do in order to receive his blessing. But we don't want to do that. We just want the blessing. Why? Because the restoration you desire requires steps that you don't want to do. It does. We want the product. We want the healing. We want the growth. We want to experience this. We just don't want to do what we must do to get from where we are to that. See, the restoration you desire requires steps that you don't. But not only that, the restoration that you desire requires steps that you also doubt. That you doubt. Not just steps that you don't want to do, but steps that you doubt will get you to where it is you want to go. Did you see what happened here when Jesus asked this man, do you want to get well? This man was probably a professional. He may have been a politician before, like things, because he did not answer this question at all. He was asked a direct question, and he just gave the answer that he wanted to give, you know? Like, it's like, what is your name? Well, I'll tell you if we really focus. It's like, what? No, give me your name. You know, like he didn't answer the question at all. Do you want to get well? Well, sir, I don't have anybody to put me in the water whenever the water is troubled. Because I know that when the water is troubled, then healing is available in the water. But I don't have anybody to put me in the water when the water gets troubled. So I feel like Jesus is probably sitting here looking at this dude and saying, this man is not answering my question. Like I answered it. John, you wrote it down, right? Do you want to get well? Yeah, that's what I recorded. Do you want to get well? Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Then why are you answering what you answering? See, Jesus, he got this man's attention. But this man was convinced that his healing was going to come from one place and one place only, that pool. This man was convinced that what he needed, what he wanted, what he desired to be made whole again, to be made right again in him, if he was ever going to get healed, it was going to come from that pool. Nowhere else. And so Jesus asked him, do you want to get well? And this man begins to talk all this noise about the pool and the water and how you can't get in there. But there's something else going on here. I think this man, by nature of his response, has also decided that he's not going to be restored. He understood the dynamics of what restoration would take, at least in his own understanding. I got to get in the water when the water is troubled. The problem is, when the water gets troubled, I ain't got nobody to get me from here to there. Everybody else be cutting in line, cutting in front of me, and I can't get from here to there. They be fast, just blind people, and they just be falling in, and then they can see, and I'm over here, and I can't move, and I just want to get to the water. He's defined all of this. He's got his thoughts and his reasons. And really what he's developed is maybe his spiel that he gives. Because on some way you hear him define his reality when Jesus asks him, do you want to get well? And you feel sorry for him a little bit, don't you? Oh, that's sad. He can't get to the water. He's been 38 years and he can't ever win, never once, Sad. But what this man has actually done is figured out a way to cope in where he's at. He's figured out a way to tell himself what is. What's going on is probably always going to be going on. The fact that this isn't what I want it to be, this is probably going to be the way it's always going to be. He had figured out a way to cope with his present reality, even though his present reality is not what it was that he hoped for. But he could cope here, even though this wasn't good, even though this wasn't what he'd want. He had learned to cope. He had learned to cope, and now he calls his coping normal. He is the man who's been by the pool for 38 years. He is lame. He is his ailment. What are you coping with that Jesus has the power to restore? Because that's the tension right here, is it not? The one asking him the question has the power to restore him. But yet he is so caught up with his ailments, so caught up with this thing that he is trying to cope with, he is learning to cope with. He now calls his normal. What are you coping with that Jesus has the power to restore? Because all of us have that. All of us have that thing, that place, that tendency, that way of viewing the world that now for us has become normal, even though it was never intended to be. Just for us, it became easier to kind of wiggle our way into this situation, and this is just going to be how it is for me. It's become easier to define ourselves in this way because, well, that is just how we cope. The reason we start to love this place of coping, the reason that we start to love this place that may be not good, may be dysfunctional, may be something we tell other people I wish wasn't a part of my life, but yet we know deep down inside we're not willing to walk through the process to have it be different in our lives, is because it is actually comfortable to cope. Some of us right now have found ourselves in destructive places that pull away our dreams, they pull away from our faith, they pull away from our belief that God can use our lives. And we stay there. We choose to stay there. Why? Because coping is comfortable. Some people, their step of coping is a step into isolation. It is. Community is available for them. Connecting with other people is available for them. But they have chosen to take a step into isolation to cope with maybe some of the things they feel on the inside, or to cope with the fact that maybe they were hurt by somebody the last time they opened themselves up to somebody. They've chosen to step into isolation. Because isolation is a way people cope. It is. And maybe now you call yourself lonely. You call yourself a loner. You say it's just me. You say nobody really loves me. Nobody really cares about me. Nobody ever calls me. But the problem is you have called yourself what you chose to step into because it was easier for you to step into that. I'll tell you this, I have never seen anybody, never in my life, have a faith that's growing and they were in isolation. Because God didn't build us to do life alone. God didn't build you. He didn't build me to disconnect ourselves, to alienate ourselves, to, even if it seems easy, to isolate ourselves all to ourselves. God didn't say that's how you're gonna thrive in this life. I know even for me, the times in my life where I've struggled to believe God the most, I've struggled to keep walking out my faith, I've struggled to believe that God was going to continue to use me, have been those times that I have chosen to isolate myself because it was easier than to walk into community. It was easier. And so we isolate ourselves as a way of coping. The only problem is in order to isolate ourselves, we build a wall around ourselves to prevent ourselves from being hurt. But that same wall that we use as a defense to keep from getting hurt also prevents love from coming in. And so we start to feel like nobody loves us. We start to feel like nobody cares about us. We start to feel like, I wonder why they don't ever call anymore. I wonder why they don't reach out anymore. I wonder why they're not as concerned about me. And the problem is we chose to isolate ourselves as a means of coping with something that we felt. But coping through isolation, it's easier than stepping into community. But maybe it's not isolation for you. Maybe it's not isolation. For some people, they choose to cope with fear. You know, fear is a coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism for generosity. Because almost every person who will tell you they can't be generous with their time, I ain't got time for that. I ain't got time to make church a priority. I ain't got time for that. I ain't got time to serve. I ain't got time to do that. I ain't got time to help those other people. I barely help myself. And they'll say stuff like this. I'm scared if I help them, I ain't gonna even be able to care for my own family. I'm scared if I run out and do that, I'm gonna be so tired all the time. And so they run over here and they choose to cope with fear rather than be generous. It's with anything you can be. It's that way with money. Oh, I'm scared if I put God first. I know I should trust God with a tithe. I know I should bring offerings. I know I should support his. I know I should do that, but I'm scared if I do that, I won't be able to. And it becomes a coping mechanism to not be generous. When generosity will free you, we choose to live in fear because it's comfortable. Anxiety is a coping mechanism. It is. Some of us would rather be anxious because it's easier to be anxious. Maybe it's easier to get sympathy and empathy when we're anxious rather than to do what the scriptures say. And when we have worries in our lives, to actually take them to God in prayer. Because I pray and sometimes it doesn't feel any different. But if I'm anxious, I'll at least get somebody to be like, you should cool out. Maybe you should talk to somebody. And I like that. Whereas if I just say I'm praying about it, they just think I'm good. But the scripture actually says to not be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and petition, make your requests known to God. And then the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. We choose not to pray because it's harder. We just stay over here and be anxious because it's an easy way to cope. And now people just think that we're anxious. We have anxiety disorders, which are very real things, and we need very real help. But we got to this place because it was comfortable for some of us. See, not everything wrong with you happened to you. Sometimes you walked into it because it was comfortable. Because fear can be comfortable. Anxiety can be comfortable. You know, many people choose to cope with shame because shame is comfortable. You say, no, it's not. Oh, it's way more comfortable than the other option. We choose to bury ourselves and think that if we ever told anybody what we really thought, what we were really struggling with, what we were really wrestling with, what we really couldn't add up, what we were wondering about ourselves or our future, our sexuality or whatever, we choose to hide and bury ourselves in shame, rather than realizing what the truth of the scripture that actually tells us that if you'll confess your sins one to another and pray for each other, that you will be healed. That healing actually comes on the other side, not just of talking to God about it, but talking to somebody I can look in their eyeballs about it. Fear, anxiety, shame, isolation. These are just a few. I could spend the rest of the time that we have walking through, but I ain't got time for that. I got to take you somewhere. I'm trying to help you to realize that maybe this thing that you are calling normal, maybe this thing that you are calling, this is who I am. It's always been this way. For 38 years, I've been like this. For 38 months, I've been like this. This is just who I am. No, it's not. Because restoration is in this room. Just like Jesus stood in front of this man and asked him, do you want to get well? He is asking you today, do you want to get well? Because restoration, write this down, will be uncomfortable before it's undeniable. You get that like maybe on Monday, like when you're just sitting back on your little Labor Day, but restoration will be uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable when you feel stricken with shame to walk to someone and say, this is how I struggle. This is what I doubt. But on the other side of that is when you get free. On the other side of that is when you get restored. It is difficult to face your fear and say, I am scared that if I put myself fully in that place, I'm scared if I trust God with that I won't have enough in other areas of my life. It is difficult to do that. It is uncomfortable to do that. It is uncomfortable if you have consoled yourself with isolation and like the pity you can receive online from telling people you are all by yourself, to actually walk towards community. It's uncomfortable. But once you get restored, oh, it's undeniable. People see you walking around and be like, what is different about her? What happened to him? And they see it and it's undeniable. After it's uncomfortable. Do you want to get well? That's the question Jesus asked. And the man replied to Jesus in a way that exposed his perspective. He said to him, I don't have anyone to help me. Which got me thinking, is this true about this man? Or is this convenient for this man? You know, every good excuse is glazed in the truth, is it not? That's what makes it good. What makes your excuse so good is there's just enough truth kind of sprinkled across the top to make people go, yep, she right. It is that way for him. Yes, it is. Yeah, I feel so sorry for him. The only problem is your excuses will only get you pity when what you need is restoration. See, this man showed his cards to Jesus because Jesus asked him a clear question. Do you want to get well? And this man said, I ain't got nobody to help me. And some of you, that is exactly what you're doing in this moment. The Spirit of God is asking you, do you want to get well? Do you want to be restored? Do you want to be free? And what you have to do is stop offering excuses and start offering faith. Stop offering excuses. God, I can't. Stop offering excuses. God, there's no way. God, they will. God, I can't afford. I'm scared they will. No. Stop offering excuses and start offering faith. By faith, Hebrews tells us that people took steps that seem a little crazy on the surface, but they took them by faith. So Jesus then calls this man to walk through his excuse. Did you see that? He called him to walk through his excuse. He said, your excuse will not keep you on that mat. He told him to get up, take up your mat, and walk. But the man had said, I ain't got nobody to help me. Jesus was like, you don't need nobody to help you right here. Get up, take up your mat and walk. You know what I find very interesting about this? Maybe you noticed it. Maybe you didn't. If you were to keep reading John 5, maybe later this week, you would actually see this because John actually explains all this. Jesus never told this man who he was. You see it? He didn't. He didn't walk up to the pool, he's just strolling around Jerusalem being like, I'm going to go over here with some sick people. Oh, here's a man. Hey, man, who's sick? You've been here for 38 years. Have you not? How did you know that? Well, I am the Son of God. I've been doing miracles. Here's my list. I've done about 78 so far, 14 different cities. I got some more planned for the future, but ultimately I'm going to die, rise again in 3 days. So would you like me to help? He didn't do that. He didn't do that. He asked the man a question. Do you want to get well? The man gave him his normal response. I ain't got nobody to help me in. When the water moves, somebody else cut in front of the line. And Jesus tells him, get up, take your mat, and walk. The reason we know that Jesus didn't reveal himself is John tells us that this man, freshly healed, new to walking, carrying his mat, because that's what he was told to do, starts walking through Jerusalem. But this was the Sabbath. And it was against the law to carry something, say your mat, on the Sabbath day. So this man starts walking through Jerusalem carrying his mat on the Sabbath day. And some religious people who love to point out what other people were doing wrong pointed out to this man, you cannot carry your mat on the Sabbath day. And this man said, psh. That's in the New International Version. You got to read that. It's contemporary. This man said, psh. He said, why are you carrying your mat? And this man said, look, I had been down by the pool of Bethesda for 38 years, and this man came by and said, do I want to get well? And I told him what I always say. He told me to get up, take up my mat, and walk, and I felt something when he said that, so I got up. Ain't nobody help me. Ain't nobody get me near the water. I got up, I rolled up my mat, and I walked away, and here I am. So that man who healed me told me to carry my mat. So back off. And they were like, well, who healed you? And this man said, I don't know. It says it in there. You should read it. He said, I don't know. He said, so you're telling me that somebody healed you, told you to get up, take your mat, and walk. You didn't walk for 38 years, and you took up your mat and walked? Yes, that is why I'm here. That's why we were having this conversation. Well, who did it? And he said, I told you once. I will tell you again. I don't know who healed me. I just know that I am. Here's what I need you to see. Here's what I need you to see. His restoration did not hang on Jesus' ability, because Jesus' ability was always within Jesus. It hung on his ability to walk it out. Hey, now walk it out. It hung on his ability. Some of y'all need to listen to more music. It hung on his ability to walk it out. It didn't hang on Jesus. Healing and power and forgiveness and everything he could ever need was in Jesus. It was available and accessible, and it would have stayed available and stayed accessible unless this man got up, took up his mat, and walked it out. And that is what so many of us need to realize today. Because some of you have been struggling with fear. You've been struggling with anxiety. You've been struggling with depression. You've been struggling with your worth. You've been struggling with who God has made you to be. And you're like, I wish God would do something. And God's like, I wish you would get up and walk it out. Because I have everything you need. If you need direction, ask me. I'll give you direction. If you need wholeness, ask me. I'll give you wholeness. You need healing? I got healing. You need forgiveness? I got forgiveness. You need provision? I am provision. I am everything you need if you will walk it out. Now walk it out. Walk it out. This man would have stayed lame with his little conversation with Jesus if he didn't walk it out. Which got me wondering. This isn't in the scripture. Everything I told you is in the scripture. This got me wondering. I wonder how many unrecorded miracles there are in Jesus' ministry, where he walked up to people with all the healing they needed, all the provision they needed, everything they had hoped for to be restored. And he gave them the instruction, but they wouldn't walk it out. It may not have happened, but it may have. I kind of think it did. Because I see so many people here today, 2,000 years later, that will put a testament to the fact that God has changed my life. But yet God says, walk this thing out. And they say, no, Jesus, I'm going to be right here. Walk it out. Walk it out. Walk it out. Take a step out of your shame and into confession. Walk it out. Take a step out of your fear and into generosity. Walk it out. Take a step out of your isolation and into community and find what God does through you. Walk it out. Walk it out. Walk it out. Walk it out. See, God will work it out if you will walk it out. God will work it out if you will walk it out. If you will take a step that scares you. If you will take a step that takes a little bit of faith. If you will take a step, I don't even know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to stand up, take up my mat, and walk. Why? Because he told me to. That's what this man experienced, and it changed his life. Because he got up, took up his mat, and walked it out. What do you need to walk out today? Some of you need to walk out some forgiveness. You need to walk out some love. You need to walk out and extend what you've never extended before. You need to give grace to people in some areas that you've chosen to hold on to and be bitter about for so long. You need to walk it out because God can restore anything in your life if you'll let him. If you'll let him. If you will walk it out.